It was a cold Thursday night in late November when Hannah Reid spotted them. She had just gotten off the late bus, clutching her coat tighter as she crossed the dimly lit street toward her apartment building. The air smelled faintly of rain and exhaust, the kind of night that made you wish you were already home under a blanket. Near the alley beside her building, she noticed a man crouched low, his arms wrapped protectively around a little girl who couldn't have been older than 7. A battered duffel bag sat at his feet. The girl's face was half buried in the man's coat, her small hands clutching the fabric like she was afraid to let go. Hannah slowed her steps. Something about the way he held her, shielding her from the cold, pulled at something deep in her chest. She'd grown up with a father who worked long hours, a man who showed his love in the quiet way he'd drape his jacket over her shoulders without saying a word. "Are you okay?" she asked hesitantly, her voice carrying over the soft hum of traffic. The man lifted his head. His hair was dark and damp from the drizzle, his jawline shadowed with stubble. His eyes, deep brown, tired but alert, met hers. "We're fine," he said quietly. "Just waiting it out." "Waiting for what?" she asked, taking a cautious step closer. He hesitated, then gave a small shrug. "Until morning." She glanced at the girl. She was shivering despite the layers she wore. Hannah's stomach twisted. The forecast had predicted the temperature would drop to near freezing before sunrise. "Do you have somewhere to go?" Hannah asked. The man's jaw tightened. "Not tonight." She chewed her lip, weighing the risk. She didn't know this man, didn't know his story. But she could see the exhaustion in his eyes and the quiet desperation in the way he held the child. "Look," she said finally, "I have a spare room. It's not much, but it's warm. You and your daughter can stay for the night if you want." The man studied her, as though trying to read her intentions. Then he looked at the little girl. "What do you think, Rosie?" The girl peeked out from the folds of his coat and gave a shy nod. "All right," he said softly. "Thank you." Inside her small apartment, Hannah made up the guest room with fresh sheets while Rosie sat on the couch clutching a mug of hot chocolate. The man, who introduced himself as Jack, stood in the kitchen doorway, his large frame almost filling it. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I know," she replied, smoothing the blanket. "But I couldn't just walk past." They spoke little that night. Jack was polite but guarded, answering questions without revealing much. He said they'd had some changes recently and were between places. Hannah didn't press. The next morning, they were gone before she woke. On the kitchen table was a note written in neat handwriting, "Thank you for your kindness. We won't forget it." She thought that would be the end of it. But later that morning, as she walked into the lobby of Rayner & Company, the marketing firm where she worked, she noticed an unusual buzz in the air. People whispered in small clusters, straightening their clothes, fixing their hair. "What's going on?" she asked her friend and coworker, Leah. "Haven't you heard? We're getting a new CEO. Today." Hannah blinked. "Today? I thought Mr. Jensen was retiring early," Leah cut in. "Apparently the board found someone to take over immediately. He's supposed to be brilliant. And, apparently easy on the eyes." Hannah rolled her eyes, heading toward her desk. She was halfway through answering emails when the conference room door opened and a hush fell over the floor. She looked up, and her heart nearly stopped. Standing beside the board chair was Jack. Clean-shaven, wearing a tailored navy suit that fit like it had been made for him, his presence filled the room just as it had her kitchen doorway. But here, there was no trace of the weary man huddled in the cold. His posture was confident, his voice steady as he addressed the team. "Good morning," he began, scanning the room. For the briefest second, his gaze landed on her. A flicker of recognition passed between them before he continued. "I'm Jack Carter, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you." Hannah sat frozen in her chair. Jack Carter. She'd read that name in industry news before, an entrepreneur who'd sold his tech startup for millions, known for his sharp business mind and low public profile. And now, her boss. Her pulse quickened as his introduction ended and the employees dispersed. She was still processing when she felt a shadow fall over her desk. "Miss Reid," Jack said, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "Could we speak in my office?" She followed him, acutely aware of curious eyes tracking their movements. Once the door was closed, she turned to him. "You're the CEO." He gave a faint, almost sheepish smile. "I was going to tell you last night." But it didn't seem important compared to keeping Rosie warm. She shook her head, still reeling. Why didn't you just stay at a hotel? His smile faded. Because I wanted Rosie to have something that felt like home, even if it was just for one night. Hotels are cold, impersonal. We've been moving around a lot lately, and she needed normal. You gave her that. She was quiet for a long moment, her thoughts a tangled mess. Why are you telling me this? Because, he said, meeting her eyes, you were kind to me when you didn't have to be. And I don't forget things like that. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed often, sometimes in meetings, sometimes in the quiet of the break room. Jack was professional, but there was an unspoken understanding between them, a memory of that cold night when they were just two strangers and a child. One evening, as she packed up her things, Jack appeared at her desk. Rosie's been asking about you, he said. Would you like to come to dinner with us sometime? Hannah hesitated, but the warmth in his expression eased her doubt. I'd like that. That dinner led to another, then to weekend outings. She learned that Jack had taken the CEO role to be closer to family after years of traveling. She saw how much he adored Rosie, how he carried the weight of single parenthood without complaint. And slowly, she realized the man who had once been a stranger in the cold now held not just the power to change her career, but the power to change her heart. The night she'd first seen him, she'd thought she was the one offering help. But in the months that followed, she came to understand that sometimes, the smallest act of kindness could rewrite the course of your entire life.